From the banks of Dewey Lake, it's the Dewey Pod Monster.
Welcome back. My name is John, and this is the Dewey Pod Monster podcast. This is the original podcast about consumption. We are proud members of the You Run Podcast Network. You'll find all of our previous, upcoming, and current episodes at yourunpodcast.com, as well as all the other amazing shows that are on the You Run Podcast Network. Go check them out. There's something for everyone there. With me this week is the host of the Dewey Pod Monster podcast, and his name is Sean. Sean, how are you doing today?
I'm pretty good. I got some new headphones. They're not creaking, and my nose isn't full of yuck anymore.
More room for farts. Anyway, y'all can't hear it, but Sean is laughing over there.
I am.
He's just
Silently to myself. Yes.
Silent but deadly is the laugh. What have you been watching this week, Sean? Have you had anything fun that you put on?
I mean, I don't know if I'd call it fun. I didn't really get a lot of chances to watch a lot of stuff. The only thing really that I can talk about that isn't something that I normally watch, I guess, is I watched the 1987 movie Blood Harvest, and Blood Harvest stars Tiny Tim. So if you're familiar with who Tiny Tim is, he spends most of the movie painted like a clown. There's a lot of close-up of, as you do, there's a lot of close-ups of his jagged brown teeth. And so the story on IMDb is Jill, visiting home from college, arrives to find her parents missing and their home vandalized. Soon, matters take a turn for the worse when she finds herself stalked and her friends disappearing one by one. So the way that they kind of tell the story, Tiny Tim he's a little slow. I think he had some kind of accident, so he's not all there. And his brother...
I was going to say, like, Tim the Toolman Taylor, and then you said he's kind of slow because he had an accent. I was like, that could still be the same Tim the Toolman
he
Taylor.
Goes, a lot. So he does that a lot, and they kind of do this, like, misdirection.
I already like this movie more than whatever you actually watched.
Oh, the movie that we're making up on the spot here?
Yes.
So they try to do a little bit of misdirection in the movie and make you think certain people are bad guys. I don't know why I'm like avoiding spoiling this movie. Long story short, it was awful. It was a really bad movie. The people who made this movie should be ashamed of themselves. That's how bad it was. It was just like pretty unentertaining just across the board. So much so it was one of those movies where I know that you've done it and I do it. When you are so disengaged with a movie because it doesn't do anything exciting, you just start like scrolling through your phone as it's playing, and you're like, you look up every few minutes and you're like, nope, still boring. And then you're kind of paying attention in the background. I watch a lot of movies at my computer, so I can have like browsers and stuff open. This was definitely like let's find out some background about this movie. And honestly, I didn't find out anything interesting about the background, or I'd share that right here. You could insert that here. Other than that, really just trying to get through and finish Gilmore Girls season 7. My kids have been watching it, and I watched it.
Wasn't expecting that one.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've been kind of, we didn't want to finish season 6 before school started, and we finished it like maybe the day before school started, which was a couple months ago now. And now we're slowly, very slowly working our way through season 7. I don't know how many Gilmore Girls fans there are out in the audience, but I am not enjoying season 7 much because they kind of, I can get into that later.
I thought you were going to say it, but I am not one of them.
I don't like the way that the original showrunner and the writer and everything and the producer left the show. And I think I was talking to my wife today. I'm like, did this show get canceled after season 7, or did they voluntarily end it? And I think it got canceled, but I'm not quite sure. I don't want to look up anything. It's one of those things where you'll start to look up information about it and you'll find out more than you want to know. So I'm just going to finish the season and then I'll look it up.
Did you say the showrunner changed?
Yeah.
I always feel like that's kind of the kiss of death for a lot of shows. Like that's basically when I lost interest in Dexter, which I know you have limited, if any, like interest in, or pretty much any Showtime show is like that. But like they do pretty good out of the gate. Then like it's season or 2 in, they're like, oh, let's change showrunners and just shoot this thing right in the shitter. Ray Donovan's another one. Like I really liked that show up until they changed the showrunner.
Yeah.
And at the moment, I can't think of a single show where the showrunner was changed and then went on to still be a good show or a better show after the fact. But that might be par for the course, because I also can't think of a lot of shows where it continued to progressively get better as the show went along. I feel like almost every show kind of degrades over time.
There are a few that are really strong out of the gate, and that kind of that momentum carries them to the end.
Seinfeld
yeah,
might
I
be
like
the
Breaking
exception.
Bad. I thought that was ended pretty well, but I think at the end you're kind of wondering how they were going to close this off. Gilmore Girls, I think the original creator was the showrunner, and I think she was one of the head writer, like the head writer, and her husband was a producer, and they just got too expensive, I think. So you can kind of tell there's a tonal shift, and I think even the actors have said how they don't like the last season. They ended up going years later, 10 years later, something like that, doing another like mini season on Netflix. It's like I can't believe we're talking this much about Gilmore Girls, but they have like a 3 or 4 episode. I think it's like 3 episodes, but they're 90-minute episodes or something like that. It might be even less than 3. Again, I'm so like anti-spoiler on stuff that I like that I won't even look to see how many episodes it is or how long they're, but I think it's like a real limited series. So, when we finish season 7, we'll jump in. Any other Gilmore Girls fans out there, let us know. Let me know. Reach out. Crap that town.
Yeah, there you go. You want to hear about the crap that I watch first, or you want to hear about the things that are interesting and good that I watch first?
I think it'd be more interesting if you tell me about the crap first.
All right. I went on a little bit of a bad alligator movie, like dip, rabbit hole type thing. I was only 2, but it was a short trip into the sewer for that. I started with the 2024 classic Meth Gator, which is...
Ah, yes, the classic.
Everything that it sounds like it is. Actually, it isn't. It says something on the cover art that says, like, don't flush your meth. Gators will get you. And there's, like, 0 flushing of meth. Basically, what happens is this gator eats a fucking boat for some reason, and the boat happens to have a bunch of meth in it. And the rest of the movie, it's like several dudes are like, that gator's not going to OD. The meth is making him superpowered and pissed. And he just, shenanigans ensue, and it's not very good, but it's got a gator eating meth. And I think the funniest part about it is, obviously they're trying to like kill the meth gator because I don't know what else you would do with it, but they're also trying to feed its addiction, but not feed it too much, because they somehow in the movie science has figured out, like, if you give it too much meth, he'll become superpowered and we won't be able to stop him ever. But if we don't give him any meth, he's going to withdraw and kill everything. I'm like, this is an interesting balance that you're trying to strike with this meth gator here.
What a catch-22.
Yeah, highly recommend something with it. I don't recommend it, actually. It's on Tubi. If you want to watch that, it's free. So don't pay for it. But also on Tubi, which came up as a immediate, hey, you watched Meth Gator, you know what you should also watch? Is some piece of shit called Replicator, which has Gunnar Hansen in it. So that's a thing. And Gunnar Hansen basically is working as like some kind of like weapons engineer for the government or something like that. And then everything that he makes is designed around making women like exceptionally horny and naked nymphomaniacs that happen to turn into alligators for some reason.
I was going to say, first off, Gunnar Hansen has a face.
Yes, he does.
Oh.
And it's not made of leather.
Wow.
It has hair on it too.
It's got hair on it too.
We'll talk about Gunnar Hansen more when we talk about some of his more well-known films like Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers or something like that. Or maybe eventually we'll talk about his movie that people actually have seen. But anyway, Replicator is kind of funny because it's just like, it is a movie that is so insanely ridiculous. And I don't know how much money they spent getting, 10 random women to be as naked as they possibly could in this movie, running around, like doing whatever. And then their whole like transformation into the gator part is basically they get the worst, like these. You ever watch a Florida Gators game and see like a college kid's gator mask that they have on? Not the one that's the actual mascot, but the one that looks like the $5 knockoff version of the mascot one.
I can't say that I have, but
it's so big and kind of looks like it might be part of a piñata, but it's not quite like mascot quality, and it definitely doesn't look like an actual alligator. Something like that. And then they kind of do the Thriller walk back and forth without shirts on for some reason.
I mean, sounds sparkling, sterling almost.
It's a step up from Meth Gator, but only one step up. It's like you got on the second step on the stairs and just said, you know what, I'm just going to stay right here. That was all the only other thing I watched, and I'm not going to necessarily call this good per se, but this is also a sliding scale, right? Like, you're good based on what? This is a 24-minute YouTube short movie called The Sheik Massacre, in which some people reincarnate the Iron Sheik as the Iron Sheik's action figure, and he kills everyone.
Oh,
yes. I sent you the trailer for this, and you were not amused.
Yes, correct.
And I don't think the actual film, I don't know if film's the right word. It's only like 25 minutes long, but I don't think that would do a whole lot to change your mind. Okay. But if you like Team America World Police and thought, I would really like to see this as the Iron Sheik killing everyone, this is the movie for you. And it's short, so you're in and out pretty quickly. That's a plus. for me. I did watch things that are actually interesting, though. One, I will say, if you haven't rewatched Rocky Horror Picture Show in a while, do that. It's a lot more fun than I remember the last time I watched it, and I had a blast watching it after we got back from Franks and Steins. I was like, I'm going to have another beer and watch Rocky Horror Picture Show, and that was a good decision. Don't need to go into that one in detail. If you don't know anything about Rocky Horror Picture Show, I kind of have questions for you, but check it out. The only other thing I watched that I need to get into this more, because there was only one episode available at the time, and I think the second and possibly the third episode is up now, is a new show on HBO. It's called It's Florida, Man. And there's a comma between Florida and Man. But basically, this is the one episode that I watch is like a short retelling of hopefully true stories from people in Florida and what they encountered. This, I mean, I'm going to kind of spoil it to get you interested in it, but I won't do it justice. Like, you'll still have to watch it. The first episode is basically about a guy who is trying to go to like an EDM concert of some kind. I think he said it was like on the other side of the country. He doesn't have the money to do it. So he basically puts an ad up on Craigslist that says, need $2,000, willing to do anything. So he gets all these replies and he picks this guy, whatever his name is. I think it was Scott, but we'll call him Scott for this. It's irrelevant.
Never trust a man named Scott. That's a rule that I have.
Well, not an American. He replies to this guy, and the guy essentially tells him, I'm going to pay you. I want you to come over to my home and cut off 3 of my toes, cook them in front of me, and eat them, and I will give you the $2,000. That's the premise of like why he's doing all this. And then the rest of it, him telling the story, it just kind of goes from there. So if you like, I don't know if you would call this documentary, because I guess I don't know what else to call it. But if you like weird, fucked up stories, and again, one episode in, it totally delivered on its title, and it will make me go back and watch whatever else they want to put out there. This is 100% worth watching. It's very like low budget because it doesn't need it. Like, it's super quick to the point. We're in, we're out. I think the first episode's like 35 minutes, so it's not even like a traditional runtime. I'm hoping it's just like, we're going to give you however long you need to tell the story, and that's it. And again, I if it wasn't for everything else that's been going on over the last week of like actual stuff to get done, I would have already sat back down and watched episode 2.
So it's reenactments, essentially, right? From people telling stories, and then
it is reenactment. At least for this one, they had two of the 3 actual people that are involved in the story. They had them on retelling it. They did not have Scott in this case on. I don't know if they couldn't find him or just didn't want to do it or what.
Spoilers.
But yeah, I don't know. But they do, at least for the first one, of actual people that are involved with it, and there's reenactments to go with it.
I'll check it out. Sounds interesting. Sounds up my alley. Sounds like something I'd like to watch.
Oh, it's 100% up your... Well, again, one episode in, it is 100% up your alley.
So far, so good.
Right. It could very well change by episode 2, and you could be like, fuck this. Here's a big pile of shit.
Here's a nice piece of shit.
Yeah, see? He's got the drop button ready to go. Anyway, Meth Gator, Replicator aside, anything else you want to touch on before we move into the family feast?
Let's move into the family feast.
All right, so we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back, and we're going to talk about Blood Rage, or Slasher, or Nightmare at something.
Shadow Woods.
Shadow Woods. What are those movies?
Something like that.
Something like that. We'll be right back. Hey, this is John, and I am excited to tell you about another exciting podcast that you can find on the You Run Podcast Network. Do you like spooky stuff? Then check out the Paranormal Misfits podcast. This podcast features your favorite besties diving fearlessly into the paranormal, uncovering mysterious phenomena, unraveling mind-bending conspiracies, and sharing their thoughts on all things horror. Head over to yourunpodcast.com now and check out the Paranormal Misfits podcast, as well as all the other great shows on the You Run Podcast Network. Okay, we are back, and we are talking about Nightmare at Blood Rage Slasher Shadow Woods, aka Blood Rage. We always start with a third-party review. This week we are starting with a third-party review on Letterboxd because there's really not that many of them to choose from on Rotten Tomatoes. So this one is from 1,000 Suns. That's one word, and he says, it's not cranberry sauce. It's shit. Movie should trim 81 minutes from the runtime. Everyone involved in this should be forced to watch it nonstop for a year as pens. Even Ted Raimi. 1 out of 5 stars. I think they do 5 stars on this page.
I think so.
It's 1 star.
What
Whether or not we agree with that, let's find out. Sean, what is Blood Rage about?
Well, if we want to find that out, we go to IMDb, we type in the words Blood Rage, and we pick the one from 1987. This one fares a little bit better than that Rotten Tomatoes score. This gets a 5.8 out of 10 with 6,000 ratings. It is unranked, meaning we don't know what it was ranked, and we don't know what it was ranked last week. But we go to the storyline of the plot, never quite sure which one is which, but we go to the one on the top because it's on the top. And then you just read the stuff on the top first. It says, a boy kills a man and accuses his twin brother of the murder. And the innocent brother ends up institutionalized while his psychotic twin goes free. 10 years later, the innocent twin escapes, which triggers his brother into killing again. And then we scroll down to that thing on the bottom. That's called the storyline. This one is care of Anonymous. It says, twins Todd and Terry seem like sweet boys, that is, comma, okay, until one of them takes an axe to the face of a fellow patron at a local drive-in. That's not how that works, but okay.
Grammar check did not catch anything in this sense.
I don't think
Okay.
grammar check was invented when this was written.
Probably not. Anyway,
Todd is blamed for the bloody crime and institutionalized whilst twin brother Terry goes free 10 years later. And as the family gathers around the table for a Thanksgiving meal, the news comes in that Todd has escaped. But has the real killer, in fact, been in their midst all along? One thing's for sure, there will be blood and rage.
so I don't really feel like this makes a huge difference while bringing it up because it seems to come up anytime that I look at anything with this movie. This movie was shot in 1983, then later released in 1987. I don't feel like that's a huge sticking point other than that it sat on the shelf for quite a bit of time and changed titles several times between whenever this started and what we got now. Aside from the title changes, which as we mentioned, this is also goes by Slasher and A Nightmare at what woods?
Shadow Woods. That's the apartment
Nightmare at
complex.
Shadow Woods.
Yep.
I prefer the title Blood Rage. It sounds a little more to the point. But
I'd
Sean,
agree.
before we start getting into this movie, who's in this movie?
There's not a really big cast in this movie, and I think there's really maybe three main characters. I think main would be arguable. We have Louise Lasser, who plays the mother Maddie. She's probably the biggest star. She's a working actress. I recognize her from the Todd Solondz movie Happiness. She was in Requiem for a Dream. She was in Frankenhooker. We'll put it this way, her first credit was in 1962. We have Mark Soper, who plays Todd and Terry in the movie The Twins. You can tell them apart because their hair is different, pretty much. He is, again, I wouldn't really call him a working actor, but he's been in movies such as Swordfish, White Oleander, Phenomenon with I almost said Todd Travolta, John Travolta, and he was in an episode of Knots Landing, for those people that know what Knots Landing is or care. And then maybe the other big star of this movie is William Fuller. He plays Brad, the mother's fiance, who doesn't really last very long and gets his hand cut off. He was in Porky's 2, Porky's Revenge. He was in a couple episodes of Miami Vice and Beverly Hills 90210. His last credit is for the TV movie Full Body Massage. And I think that may have been a Skinamax release because I think I read about Full Body Massage and there was a lot of nudity, and then a bunch of one and doners is the rest of the cast.
You're just going to bury the lead with the star of this movie, the real star power, the person that gets you into the drive-in theater and sells you condoms in the bathroom?
Oh, geez. Okay, so Ted Raimi, right? Ted Raimi's in this?
Yes.
He's in it for like a minute max at the very beginning. If you blink
He's
long
selling
enough.
condoms with a paper or with a safety pin through them. It's fucking great.
Not the smartest salesman. But yeah, he's a blink and you'll miss it kind of cameo.
I do have a little bit of a bone to pick with you on how you describe Mark Soper in this. I'll put this out there. You can tell them apart more than why. Okay, this is an interesting movie for several reasons, but one of the things that's interesting about this, there's a lot of like stereotypical bad acting in this, and Mark Soper leads the pack with that in a lot of ways. Like a lot of stuff he does is just so ridiculous, and you'll probably hear like, you want a drinking game for this, take a drink every time you hear the word ridiculous, because this movie has a lot of it. That said, as unhinged and crazy as most of his performance is, I think he does a really good job of portraying Terry and Todd differently enough that you never really feel like they're being played by the same person. Like, I know they're the same actor, but I feel like he did enough to like make them noticeably different, not just because their hair is different, but they talk different, they act different, they walk different. Which one is the one that's not the murderer? Todd, right? Yeah, Todd. I might fuck that up. That's the other drinking game. How many times I fuck up which one's Terry and which one's Todd?
To be honest, I don't know if I even remember which one was which.
Yeah. My point is, like, which names aside, you never really hit a point in the movie where you can't distinguish which one is the killer and which one isn't. And I think he does a good enough job creating these characters and giving them their own traits and, I guess, calling cards where it never feels like he's just going through the motions. It seems like whenever he's on screen as, it doesn't matter which way it goes. Whenever he's on screen as Terry, you're aware that he's playing Terry. And if he's Todd, you know that he's Todd. So you know when he's the good guy and you know when he's the bad guy. And up until, spoilers, the very end of this movie, when they have their little pool noodle fight, it never really hits a point where you're like, all right, that looked kind of phoned in.
No, I mean, I'll give you that. I think that's justified. But I also think that whichever one the good one is, the one that escaped from the institution, he doesn't really talk that much.
Pretty sure that's Todd.
Okay, we'll call him Todd. And then 5 minutes later, we'll call him Terry. But he doesn't really say that much. I mean, he was formerly catatonic. So yes, when they show him, he will be very timid. He's kind of shy. He doesn't talk a lot. His voice does sound different. But I don't know. You just don't. I feel like you don't see him enough on screen to really be like, man, that's that guy. If just looking at him, I'm going to look at his hair, because Terry, the bad one, has his hair kind of slicked up and kind of poofy. And Todd has his hair kind of a little bedraggled, you know, like a little stringy and kind of all over the place, wet most of the time because he's kind of walking in the rain and whatever else. But I'll concede, yeah, he does, for all of his overacting, he does okay in portraying two different characters.
Okay, well, there we go.
Yeah.
Anyway, time
Small
for
victory.
hot dogs.
Yeah, let's do it.
Then you
Is this your first watch with this one?
It is, yeah. First time I've seen this. You just recently saw this for the first time, didn't you?
Yeah, this is my second watch with this. So I watched this probably 2 or 3 months ago, and I had an ulterior motive why I was watching it, which we'll get to at some point. Most of the time when I hear about this movie, it's about this time of year. It pops up for like 5 minutes because it's always the same, like, oh, I need a horror movie to watch because it's Thanksgiving. And it does check both of those boxes. It is a horror movie, and it does take place on or around Thanksgiving. I'm assuming it's on Thanksgiving. But it's kind of one of those movies that it comes and goes so quick. It's I feel like it should be in the same, like, you know, airspace as movies like Sleepaway Camp or Pieces, or those B cult movies that have enough going for them that I think you could show them to not everyone, but the majority of horror fans, that they're going to at least find enough things in this movie that are either ridiculous, funny, bloody, or all of the above to be like, all right, this isn't Halloween, but it does enough to make me be like, I should watch this.
Would you call it a deep cut?
Sure, why not?
Oh,
Only
okay.
certain parts. Did you have any preconceived notions leading into this other than knowing that I watched it recently?
No, not really. This is I would say watching the trailer, because, okay, so we're going to show this at Frankenstein's in November. So I had to pull the trailer because we show a trailer basically before the main movie. So I had seen the trailer enough times, because the trailer is actually really hard to find. It's like a 45-second trailer, and it's not like a typical trailer. It almost feels like a fan edit to a point. The trailer that
It might be.
the one that's on YouTube, and there's like different versions that have VHS cut-ins and sound effects, and people have tried to do all this stuff with it. And I think Arrow Entertainment, I think, is the one that's redistributed this most recently, and they have a weird trailer. So really pulling the trailer, really, you know, I mean, we've discussed, I'm not a big trailer guy. I don't like to go watch trailers. I like to go into things blind. I feel like the trailer kind of, I thought at first it was going to give away a lot of stuff that happens in the movie, and it really doesn't. But it does kind of give you the greatest hits almost of a lot of things that happen. So I didn't have any context around that. But when I watched it, I feel like watching the trailer kind of, I don't know, pushed my opinion maybe one way or another as to what I thought was going to happen. So then that, of course, sets up expectations. So I think that was probably a bad idea for me to watch the trailer, because, I mean, yeah, a lot of silly stuff happens in the movie. Ridiculous things happen. Take a drink. But at the same time, like, if we're just going to get into it, I think that the movie, to me, it really starts out very ridiculous and comedic. And it has like this kind of edge to it, this like comedic kind of edge to it. It feels like they're going for this real dark humor. But then I feel like as the movie progresses, they try to play it a lot more serious it's like the tone shifts at some point. And I don't know if it's like the scene, like around the scene with the nerdy guy who's on the date with all the different liqueurs and the body shots and shit. And he's like, oh, coconut liqueur. I've never had whatever. I think or it's a banana or something. Oh, it's a body shot.
It's coconut liqueur and like red wine of some kind.
And I feel like that's kind of when the movie takes this shift where it's not really so funny anymore. Like it doesn't, they kind of give up on the humor piece of it. And it could be, we said filmed in 82 or whatever, 84, released in 87. Maybe there was something to do with, there was a change in film. I don't really know. I don't know like what the circumstances were around it being delayed. And maybe it wasn't at all. Maybe filming wasn't an issue with that. It just feels like something happens in the movie at some point where it's kind of goes from being this dark, humorous take on a slasher Thanksgiving horror movie, and then it goes into this other track where it's trying to be very serious and being a little bit more terrifying, and it kind of lost me for some reason at that point.
So I think the movie does have a little bit of an identity crisis, and I don't mean that as a pun because of what the two, like Todd and Terry, are. When we're getting stuff like the opening scene in this movie, like before Todd and Terry are grown, is fucking great. Like you get past, Ted Raimi condom dealer, and you get into this like drive-in theater where mom is going to bang whoever in the front seat, but instead of parking the car so that her kids are distracted from her banging, she just like shoves them in the trunk, basically. It's away from the movie theater.
Yeah, they were sleeping.
Sure, until the car starts rocking.
Right. Don't come a knocking.
Right. So this is all very like, all right, this feels very slasher movie. Like the kids get out and you get your first kill in the movie, which is fucking great, by the way. Like just smacks the shit out of the dude with a hatchet.
Yeah.
Chick runs butt ass naked through this like drive-in theater screaming like a maniac, and then we're off to the races. So you mix that with like this very synth heavy like 80s sounding score, which works perfectly for this movie. You're like, all right, I kind of know what feel like I know what I'm getting myself into, and that's fine. And that vibe of the movie comes back really anytime that Terry, sure,
the killer,
yeah, anytime that the killer is doing his like killing stuff, that's kind of the vibe that you get, is like schlocky, over the top, ridiculous 80s slasher trash. All for that. Where it takes weird turns and changes for me is all the shit that you get with the mother between, I guess they don't flat out say it, but it's very heavily implied, and that there's like an incestual relationship going on there, which is just like a weird tonal shift. It's weird to bring up anyway, but it's definitely a weird tonal shift for this type of movie. It's that, and then all the shit that the mother does. Like there's a full on, like, I think it's like a full on 2 minutes where the mom's just sitting on the floor in the kitchen eating Thanksgiving leftovers with like 3 plates on the ground, bare hands, just shoving food in her mouth. I was like, this time, the first time I watched it, I didn't like, that scene must have come and gone, and I either didn't notice or who knows, whatever. Didn't even think about it. When I watched it this time, I was like, man, this is really going on a long time of her just sitting on the floor fucking eating. And it's kind of funny because it looks ridiculous. It looks like she's in, nighttime blouse or whatever the fuck she's wearing, and like she looks weird to begin with, and she's always trying to get railed by whoever has like a dong that's near her. So it's got this weird, like, she's a weird character to begin with, and it's never really flushed out per se to like justify it. I mean, I guess it is, but it's not like like the dynamic between her and her children is confusing, to say the least. And I think that, if anything, is what derails the majority of the movie. But the stuff that, bad Todd or bad whatever, bad twin does when he's off on his killing spree is so over the top, and so like it's like a after school movie with great practical effects thrown in to kind of spice it up and make it a hard R movie that makes it ridiculous and fun.
I do want to give props to the special effects, the practical effects. I thought that, I don't know what we always say, what was the budget on this movie?
I think it's like 70 grand is what I thought I heard.
Some of it does look a little silly. You can see how they did a lot of the effects. It's the sharpest machete ever, because this thing like cuts somebody in like literally not in half down the center, but across their torso
Right.
But I thought, other than like stupid quibbles about like, oh, that's dumb, that would never happen, like those just same stupid arguments about horror movies in general. It's a slasher movie. It's supposed to be fun. The effects look really good for what this movie is. It's not big budget special effects, but the special effects that they do have on the budget that they have look really good. I was like really impressed. It's what I have as a high point or a like or whatever in my list of stuff about this movie.
I feel like you had more to say there and then you just stopped.
No. No, I mean, I've got a list of a few dislikes, and I don't know, some of them it isn't even like out of context. They're not really even pertinent.
I have the best out of context line, but we'll get to it, I'm sure, at some point. So you mentioned you have a list of things that you don't like. So what's some of the things that deter you from this?
Well, I mean, I think one of the things is the trailer. I wrote like, does it do the movie justice? I don't really know if it does or not. It feels like it kind of does a bait and switch a little bit with like what you're getting from the movie based on the trailer, but it's a trailer. I mean, it's supposed to get you to want to watch the movie. I think the other big dislike that I have is the movie pretty much, I would say like 90% of the movie takes place in an apartment complex. The mother's boyfriend, Brad, like he's the manager of this apartment complex. I can't really tell if it's the same complex they live in or not. I don't really get that, but it's like the only people that live in this complex are the people that all know each other that are being terrorized or whatever. There's nobody else there. And it's a big looking place. There are people screaming and running around and, getting hacked up and just making all this noise. There's no other people. Even the other characters that are in the same like complex don't hear anything. They don't react. If they do, they don't react to these people screaming for their lives and people getting murdered and all this shit happening. It's just like everything exists in this bubble, which, okay, that's fine. I mean, that's a thing, but it just seems like you have this big complex to use as your backdrop, but it's so empty. It's just void of any kind of life at all other than that. Then the rest of it's just kind of like the other big complaint I have is the killer, the bad twin, whichever one it is. He seemingly is anywhere that he needs to. He's like Jason Voorhees. He has underground tunnels. He just warps and he shows up. He's this people are running for like miles and 20 minutes and shit. And then they run into this locked apartment and he's in there like just out of nowhere. Like, it doesn't leaps of logic. And like, how did he get there? Like, why isn't this guy struggling to get around? He must just crawl through the vents. He's in the place before they are. He knows where they're going to be. He knows where they're going to go. Yeah, again, could it be like a time constraint thing? They just want to keep this movie rolling. The movie's only an hour and 22 minutes, so it's not a long movie by any means. It's actually on the shorter end. But I don't know, maybe it could have been, I don't even want to say padded out because I don't feel like they need to pad it out. I think it's like a perfect runtime. And I think it's actually a little long, to be honest, like just some of the stuff. Cutting out some of the scenes like you mentioned, a lot of the stuff about the mom, I don't really understand what her deal is other than just trying to jump on any pole she can get involved with. And it's like that scene where, yeah, she's sitting in front of the fridge eating the leftovers. And you're like, I don't know, when I saw it, I just thought to myself, what does this have to do with anything else? Yes, is she unstable? For sure. She doesn't seem like she's all there. She didn't seem like she was all there at the beginning of the movie when the kids are in the station wagon, supposedly, quote unquote, sleeping in the station wagon while the movie's playing. So it's not really any big leap of logic to think like, oh, no, okay, she's just, something happened to her. No, she's always kind of been like that. But I don't know. It's weird.
I would say almost all of her scenes could be trimmed out, like down to super minimal, except for the end, because although the end is a different thing that we'll get to.
You need that explanation or whatever.
Yeah. But aside from like the end, the only other scene that she has that I would not trim down because it's, again, so I'm playing into the drinking game now. So fucking ridiculous.
I'm drunk.
I love when she finds the body of Porky's and so we kind of mentioned it, but like, bad guy comes in and, Porky's is porking his mom. So he decides, apparently this is what sets him up. Anytime that his mom gets her, her clamoring by anyone other than him, apparently this sends him into a murder rage, I guess. I'm kind of reading between the lines, but that's all we really get in this movie. So he goes to confront Porky's and, walks right in holding a machete that for some reason already has blood, even though I don't remember if he had used it on a person or not yet, whatever. And I like that he kind of turns around and it's super quick. Like there's no buildup. It's just instant like blood rage. He turns around and he's like, oh, hey, Terry. And he's like, hey, cuts off his fucking hand. And he has a good like prolonged scream with like lots of, blood, hacks the shit out of his head and then poses the body in a very much like, oh, fuck, why do I still have this job kind of like stance. which is all fine and good, but she comes back to the, the body at some point later on in the evening, and this whole room is just like splattered with blood everywhere. It looks like what it is. It's a murder scene. There's a hand sitting on the ground, presumably still with a beer can in it. He drinks old style, so he has decent taste in beer. I give him that. And she just sits there. Again, I don't remember his name either, so I'm going to keep calling him Pork. She's like, Porkies. She's like, until she goes up to him and pokes him in the head, and his whole, like, everything collapses and, like, just...
Well, the thing, too, about that scene, so that you've set it up, she's outside of his it's like a door wall, a slider, whatever you want to call it, whatever your local parlance is for what this glass door is, and she's banging the shit out of it, both hands like, Brad, and then she just takes a step back and calmly just opens it. It's like, what the fuck are you bashing on the thing for? It was not locked. You knew it was unlocked because you gently tried to open it, and it opened, and you walk in. It's one of those things where, and I think that in particular, that scene specifically, it's one of those movies, you've been like kind of enduring something, or I feel like I was enduring something for long enough, and you just find any reason where you're like, that is so stupid. Why is she putting so much effort into banging on this door? The guy's clearly not moving. Like you said, the entire room is splattered with blood. Maybe she couldn't see it from her vantage point or whatever, but when she comes in, it's not like
you can't avoid it.
Yeah, it's not like somebody came in, they like strategically cleaned all the blood off these specific areas. It's like, no, this place looks like hell.
Right. But it is funny because
it is.
It's just, again, this is where the movie excels, is when it does dumb slasher tropes. And I don't want to say it pushes them to their limit, but it just really embraces them. And it does a good job of taking bad Terry or bad to whichever one is the bad one. And he's like just so fucking manic. And you pair that with this really good like synth score that just kind of plays it along really well. Like this dude's running it like back and forth, and he's like covered in blood and carrying a murder weapon that's covered in blood. And he's going up to people like, man, my brother's fucking crazy. You better go find him and kick his ass. And they're all like, yeah, you're right.
My brother's crazy, isn't he? Well, and then I do like the fact that he kind of plays all these people against his brother that's coming. Oh, my crazy brother, he escaped the mental institution. He's on his way. So he sets it up that everybody's going to be on the lookout for him. Meanwhile, that lets him kind of run rampant and do whatever the fuck he wants to do. I didn't really pick up on any of the subtext of the mom and the whichever bad twin, like the relationship between the two, other than I just chalked it up to the mom being crazy. So maybe you picked up something I didn't get. But
that's probably what I thought the first time that I watched it. I think the second time that I watched it, I don't want to say I was looking for more, but I think just
something kind of clicked.
Knowing what I was getting myself into, I was like, because I think this movie, manic is probably another good word for this movie, is just once things start happening in it, the stuff that you want to see, the slasher things, the 80s horror things, it delivers on that. Like, in my opinion, it's the kind of stuff that if you haven't seen it, and that's the kind of movie that you like, at least for me, I'm like, I'm having a lot of fun with this. Like, is this quote unquote good? Debatable, but it is fun. And that kind of is most of what I want when I put on this kind of movie.
I'm looking for the same thing. And I am really looking forward to seeing this with a crowd, to see how, I don't know how many of the people that are going to show up to Franks and Steins are going to be like repeat viewers of it. Mm-hmm. I'm assuming probably not very many. The crowd that we get is generally like people that seem like they know what we're showing most of the time. I don't know. We don't.
There's always one or two that are like, I've never seen this.
Yeah.
So.
We should do a thing. We should do a poll like, hey, how many people have seen this movie? And just kind of get a impromptu poll. Cause I'd be interested to see how many people just came out because it's a movie and they trust our taste, but
questionable.
Yeah. I mean, as it may be.
But this is also a good one for that kind of environment because, or for like, having people around for things, because this movie has built-in breaks like, oh, she's eating food in front of the fridge. Time to go take a piss.
Yeah. Because she's doing it for a few minutes. So you got your, pee time.
So it has good setup for that kind of thing. And again, up until last year, this is the only, well, unless you count the Mutant Turkey movie, this is the only like true Thanksgiving slasher that I can think of. And there's probably another one out there. And if someone else knows one, please do let us know what it is, because
we're down.
Thanksgiving only comes around once a year, and we've only got 2 of these to talk about. Otherwise, you're going to have to suffer through Ninja November every year.
And I think we might have already, got the cream of the crop with what we've already talked about.
I mean, between what we started this month with and what we've already done, I mean, you want us to watch Shaw Brother movies, I'm totally down for that. But like, I don't know if I want to do 4 of them in a row again. Might be much. Some other things that I jotted down that I found to be entertaining. Actually, the only other thing that I wanted to, put down that I thought really needed to be mentioned because it's, again, ridiculous and funny. I like when, I think it's Todd, comes back and he starts kind of realizing like, oh no, Terry's killing people again. I like when he finds his doctor cut in half from a machete. Very good. She was halved, as they would say in Dewey Cox. And he tries to put her back together for some, like, he seems to be aware that she's dead, but he still repositions the bottom half of her body to the very deflated top half. Like, all of her innards in the top half are just like deflated out. Like, she's maybe an inch thick on the top, but the mannequin on the bottom was not filled with the same type of guts. It's very plasticky. So it looks like he took like the My Size Barbie legs and it's just like, I'm Todd, and moved on with his night.
I mean, to be fair, the person's breathing. You can see him breathing. Most of these people, when they're dead, they're still breathing. So, he could have, maybe it was just a reaction, the body reacting or whatever, but he could have thought they were possibly still alive, right?
Yeah. The other thing I want to wonder with this has to be after daylight savings time, because this is like the longest night of occurrences ever, because the majority of this movie takes place in one evening, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of shit going back. Like, this dude gets his steps in like no problem in this one night.
Yeah, I mean, that must have been, they must have just went from place to place to place. Yeah, there are a lot of set pieces, a lot of different apartments and situations going on.
Bodies.
Yeah, a lot of different people, considering this whole huge apartment complex that they use like 3 apartments for. But okay, whatever.
I don't know how much more we can really go into this without like ruining the whole movie. Is there anything that you want to hit on?
No, I think I've said what I wanted to say.
Well, what time is it then?
Then you're in for a big treat, bro, because it's hot dog time.
So I'll go ahead and take the lead on this. This is possibly my fault, so we'll go with that. This is, for me, this is a fun movie. Like, this is 100% the kind of 80s slasher trash that I love. And I don't care about the, like, heavy plot aspect points, the piss break points. Like, that's in there. Sure, whatever. I like the manic over the top side of this. This movie looks like I want a slasher movie to look. It sounds like I want one to look based off the scoring in it. The performances, although they are debatable at best and terrible at worst, they feel very right at home for this kind of movie. And both times I've watched it now, I was like, I'm having a lot of fun with this piece of shit. This is kind of the thing that I'm into. So I'm not doing like a number on it, but this is an easy, like, I'll take 2 with like mustard and, whatever, mustard and onions on them at least. Like, serve them up. I'm shoving them down. No problem for me.
Utah, give me 2.
Exactly.
Whose hot dog is this, huh? Is it yours?
Yeah, I want to say that since we changed the grading scale, we did it earlier this month. This movie is much easier to rate for me. It's an interesting take. It's a horror movie that's centered around a family Thanksgiving gathering. There are not enough of those. The special effects, like I mentioned, that's like really one of the high points. I was it's listed in my list of likes as being just impressed by the special effects, regardless of what the budget is. I think they did a really good job on that. But on the other hand, the acting seems really forced. I think if the movie was able to decide on a tone rather than going back and forth between this really dark comedic take on a slasher and being a more serious suspense thriller kind of killing movie, it may have kept my attention a little bit better. And I can't really put my finger on it. There's just something about the movie to me that it took there's just something, and I can't put my finger on it. There's just something in the movie that happens that just takes all the air out of it for me. Like, I was really prepared to enjoy it. Like I said, the trailer set me up and it kind of, in a way, kind of set me up, but not really, because I saw all these things and I'm like, oh no, I'm going to see all the really cool kills basically in this trailer. But then there was still stuff that came out that was like, oh no, that was a really good effect. And I think seeing the effects took away from my enjoyment of just kind of sitting and watching the movie. Again, I'm really interested in watching this movie at batch with a crowd, see how that kind of effect of other people watching it, maybe it'll change my mind, I don't know. But in the meantime, it didn't really thrill me. I'm going to give it a half a hot dog. For me, half a hot dog. A full hot dog is like, you got to see this. This is something you have to see. Half a hot dog is like, it's okay. It's not horrible. It's just kind of meh. Like, see it. You probably want to see it. If I said no hot dogs, that would mean like, I would not watch this again. I'm giving it a half a hot dog. That means I'm giving it the possibility of watching it again. I'm going to watch it in a couple weeks. So I'm for sure going to watch it again. I just kind of hope that with the crowd environment, that changes my opinion on it.
So like Sean said, this is our movie for Frankenstein's at Batch Brewing this month. That is going to happen on November 21st, be at 7 o'clock as per usual. I don't know if we're inside or outside yet there, to be determined on that. Doesn't matter. We're going to be out there and have a good time. There'll be specialty food. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a turkey sausage of some kind because it's always based around the movie and the holiday. And yeah, we'd like to have you come out and have a beer with us and watch Blood Rage. It'll be a hell of a lot of good time.
And I want to point out, we don't give enough credit about Frankenstein's, but it puts a lot of work into doing and they're out there sausages. They're not like, oh, he didn't go to Meyer or Kroger or someplace and pick up Johnsonville brats and he put an onion on it. It's like he's blending different meats or different flavors and all this crazy. What was the last one? Mushroom, some kind of black mushroom and curry or something.
I like that he said, this has a lot of demon shit on it. So yeah, it was mushroom, some kind of pepper and curry that was pureed on top of a hand ground pork sausage. Every sausage there is ground there. So they're not, like you said, not going out and buying them. I know in the past they've
Batches and cooking Johnsonville brats.
That's right. They've done a escargot sausage for something.
Tremors.
I don't remember which movie. Was it Tremors?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's always a tremendous amount of thought that goes into it. And I certainly appreciate that. And Batch's food menu is fucking great to begin with. So even if you don't want the specialty sausage, there's always something going on up there that's worth shoving in your face hole for sure. We're going to start wrapping up here and we're going to be talking about our question of the week. And this week is kind of holiday centric, I guess. Our question of the week is, which holiday do you think is underrepresented in the horror genre? We'd like to hear your holiday horror suggestions. So we're going to go start on X today. We only had responses on X and Facebook. And over on X, we're going to start with @WoodsPodcast1, which is Podcast in the Woods, fellow You Run Podcast Network members. And Boomer says Halloween. You would think there would be at least one or two damn films set on that damn day.
You know, what the hell? It's built in, spooky. Can't make any movies about Halloween? It's horseshit.
You know what? Between Halloween and Christmas, I don't know how we get through the holiday season. There's just not enough holiday-themed movies. Justin over at Pop Culture Reflections Podcast, also on the You Run Podcast Network, says July 4th. I always like the use of the parade, and I Know What You Did Last Summer, and I feel like the 4th of July is a good background for horror. It is underused. I haven't watched I Know What You Did Last Summer in a long time, but I do feel like I'm due for a rewatch of all three of them because I don't like myself enough, apparently. I remember them going downhill pretty quick, but Uncle Sam is a pretty entertaining 4th of July horror movie, even though it is also ridiculous and kind of shit at the same time.
That's the one with the guy on the stilts, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So, because nothing makes a better getaway than stilts.
Big strides, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So our friends over at Dissect That Film, they said, we need more Thanksgiving horror. I know we got a decent one last year, but that is not enough. Shout out to The Last Thanksgiving by Eric Lornick for being one of the tent poles of the few that we can actually have. I haven't seen The Last Thanksgiving, but I will add that to the to-watch list.
We have one for next year, possibly, if we remember.
Yep, so there you go. And then last on X is Leprechaun 1981, shockingly, says St. Patrick's Day.
What? A leprechaun would say that? Might be a leprechaun. Could be a crackhead that got a hold of the wrong stuff.
He just wants his fucking gold.
Give me the gold. I want the gold.
Switching over to Instagram, we're going to start with Video Tasties. Also a member of the You Run Podcast Network, has a awesome YouTube channel that is absolutely worth checking out. And he says, I'm assuming, he says, Pancake Day, Shrove Tuesday in the UK.
I don't know if that's real or not, but if it's not, it should be. And if it is, I apologize for laughing.
I'm going to assume that it's real because I don't know what Shrove Tuesday is. And I didn't do the research. I did tell him that we do have the Haunted House of Pancakes coming out to look forward to. So there is that. So
I don't know what that is.
When John from Final Summer was on, he was telling us about it. It's one of the things that he was working on. So
I'll take your word for it.
Okay.
All right. Sounds delicious.
Last this week, friend of the show, the Gore Gary, who you can absolutely follow on Instagram. He's got a horror-centric page, which is worth checking out for sure. Says, always thought St. Patrick's Day was ripe for a slasher, if you consider that a holiday. Since it's kind of sort of new, Indigenous Peoples Day has potential. Bring back Old Chief Woodenhead. Indigenous Peoples Day definitely would have potential, and it definitely has potential to go like off the rails in a way that gets someone fired really quick. But I could see that also having a lot of like lore built into it to make it totally worth watching. Would just be a matter of getting it to the right person, I'm sure. St. Patrick's Day seems to be the popular answer. Am I the only one who's watched Leprechaun? I mean, we showed that one at Batch too. It seems like
I think there's only been like 1 or 2 of those, right?
I own like 7 of them. So,
That was a joke.
but I don't think any of them actually happen on St. Patrick's Day. Do any of them actually happen on St. Patrick's Day? I'm not sure they do.
I've only seen one.
You haven't seen Leprechaun in Space? Oh, we need
No.
to change that.
I haven't seen Leprechaun in the Hood.
Well, you heard it here first. Next December is going to be all Leprechaun December,
Yeah, just in time for St. Patrick's Day.
just in time for St. Patrick's Day. Sean, what do you think about this? What holiday needs to be represented more in horror?
All of them. Honestly, we need more horror movies themed around every holiday. There's just not enough of them. There's not enough good ones, at least. Maybe I just don't know what they are.
I think that Valentine's Day, although My Bloody Valentine is a great movie in its own right, and they actually did just fine with the remake, I feel like Valentine's Day could have a lot more horror based around it, just because just the concept of love just leads to so many fucked up ideas.
Horror.
Yeah, real horror. So I think that's kind of undersold, would be outside of Thanksgiving, probably the other one that use it. I actually, although I enjoy Thanksgiving horror movies we have because they're nuts, I'm kind of okay with it not getting just like pummeled with a bunch of like, and I say this from a place of love, a bunch of shitty horror movies, because it's right between 2 other holidays that already have plenty of that. I'm okay with spacing it out a little bit and maybe moving it to a different part of the year.
Yeah, and I like my answer of all of them, because that just opens the door for every one of them. It doesn't have to be, I
Halloween,
don't think
Christmas.
Halloween or Christmas are underserved. Obviously I think those are probably the ones that are the most served, but we've got a lot of other ones that President's Day. How many President's Day horror movies do we have? I don't know. 4th of July is a good one, but I feel like summer, there's a lot of movies that take place, horror movies that take place in summer that you could maybe corral into being like a 4th of July thing, but none of them maybe explicitly. There's not a lot of explicitly 4th of July themed ones, but all of them.
I always say Christmas ones are interesting because I don't know if this is just me, but I feel like the bar is just lowered so much when it comes to a Christmas movie. And I think that's because I get so drained by Christmas, like the holiday. I mean, we're recording this on November 4th and there's already Christmas shit fucking everywhere, it's in stores.
Do you know how many Hallmark holiday movies I've already watched?
I could take an educated guess.
A few.
Yeah.
And we've only just started.
By the time, like a perfect example of like a not that great Christmas horror movie that I had a lot of fun with, the movie that I come back to, like this movie wasn't all that good. It's called Christmas Bloody Christmas. It's just like a short horror movie where Santa is a robot that kills people. I by the time I got around to watching it, it was like mid-December. I was like, I don't care. It's got Santa killing people. I'm content. And that was kind of it. So for me, the bar is super low when it comes to Christmas horror movies. Do you have people dying at Christmas time? Cool. Let's go. I'm in. I like all of these Silent Night, Deadly Night movies, and they go, I'm not sure how downhill they go because they kind of start downhill, but once you get past part 2, they really go off the rails really quick, and I'm still okay with that.
Ho, 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 I'm Santa Claus and I'm here to kill you, you little fuck.
Yeah, exactly. I don't, setting it at a holiday almost lets you kind of lower the bar to an extent. You can just make things fun without overthinking it.
Did that freak you out? You just
No.
kinda looked like you're off guard for a second.
I didn't expect it. I was like, that's not the demon guy. So
No.
he's back in his cage.
Mm-hmm.
What else we got? Are we done? Is this it?
I think we're done.
All right. So that's all we got for this week. Again, if you're in local to where we are in the Detroit metro area or Michigan, or if you want to fly in, I mean, whatever you want to do, please come out to Bad Brewing with us on November 21st. Again, we will be showing, what's this movie called? We will be showing Blood Rage at Franks and Stein's. There'll be all kinds of food, beer, and all kinds of other good festive stuff. We're looking forward to it. In the meantime, we do ask that you please leave us a review if you haven't already. You could do that on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to this to. We would appreciate that. You can follow us on all the social medias. We are at Dewey Pod Monster. I reply to stuff pretty regular on there, so please do hit us up on there. Give us feedback. Give us movie suggestions. Is there something you want us to talk about? Send it our way. We have an ongoing list of movies that we haven't got to yet, and your name could be read as like, this guy made us watch this shit. Also, please check out the You Run Podcast Network. That's where one of our homes is, and we greatly appreciate you going out there, subscribing to the shows there, reviewing them, liking them, all that good stuff. Everyone on that network is super gravy, super great.
Super gravy.
Super gravy. Check them out. Sean, what am I forgetting? I know I just rambled off a bunch of stuff. Help me out here.
I don't think you forgot a goddamn thing. I was going to say, we'd love for you to come out the batch. We'd love to see you. We'd love to have you. We'd love to watch this movie with you. Other than that, thanks again for everybody that's leaving feedback, the people that are leaving feedback. If you want to find out about any of the things that we talked about on the show, from what we've been watching to this movie and maybe where you can watch it for free, we supply all that stuff in the show notes. So check it out. Some of those links, if it's not a free one, if it's like an Amazon link, specifically Amazon links, those are affiliate links. If you click on the thing, if you buy something from Amazon, we get a little kickback. Maybe we get a penny or two. Jeff Bezos gets to fill up his jet and pollute the earth and fly around the world and, I don't know, fuck bitches or whatever he does on his spare time. We get like a penny from that. So that's kind of cool. And if you're interested in checking out any of my Michigan craft beer adventures, you can find me at youtube.drafttherapy.com or find me on social media at Draft Therapy.
All right. Well, that's it for this week. We'll be back next week with more stuff. I was going to say Thanksgiving shenanigans, but I'm not sure what order these are going to come out in. So either way, come back and we'll talk about more shit. Have a good one.
Blah, blah, blah.